Hi, welcome to this episode of the Living Work Abroad Show with me, Sam, where this week we're looking at the good, the bad and the ugly changes that are progressing in the world today for UK expats. That's expats living and working in the UK or expats that are living and working abroad out of the UK. Depending on what your domicile is, what your citizenship is, there's different aspects of tax and residency that affect you. And for that, Product Partnership or expats, expat experts, you can contact us at productpartnership.com. So let's start with the good. Let's sing a praise for something that benefits expats and travellers that are British citizens. The UK Passport Office is really very, very good at the moment. If you want a new passport, to renew your passport, you can do that online. You make that application, and then within 3 weeks maximum, you're going to get your new passport back and your old one for your records. So when you're travelling abroad, that's really, really efficient. 3 weeks, online service, 3 weeks. Maybe not quite as good as the Irish system, which includes the EU biometric card or biometric passport in the same system. But it's pretty good. And don't forget, a UK passport has got biometric information on it in terms of photographs and images, but not fingerprints and facial recognition. More of that later today. So the UK passport service is very, very good, and something that enable you to, as a British citizen, to travel visa-free around the world with little encumbrances, except the world is changing. And we've got a world coming in where we've got travel visas that are starting for people around the world. Post Olympics and post the European football tournament this year, the delay in the rollout of UK and EU travel authorities and for people crossing border is going to be speeded up. And the EU have now announced after the Olympics that they intend to start the electronic travel authority scheme to get it in place and operational from around about the 10th of November 24 and fully running and in force from May 25. So before the summer holidays next year, anybody travelling to the EU will require some form of visa, because if you've got a travel authority, it's the same as a passport. It's maybe different checks and different validations, but when you get your passport, you've got your photo ID and your identity and logistics. Biometrics has moved things forward. So in the United States now, if you've got a long-term entry visa, it's all done on biometrics, and it's done on biometrics on camera as you walk through the customs. So there's no checking, no stamping of passports, and no border checks by a human. It's all done on camera. So in the EU, at the moment, you've got this awful Schengen visa scheme. So if you've not got a visa-free traveller into the EU, you have to apply for a visa and provide all the paper records that your life could wish away at an EU embassy to get a visa applied for and approved for your multi-entry, for your 90-day trip to the EU. This is why they postponed it until after the Olympics in the EU, because the international travellers would not have been able to get into the EU in the numbers required for the system. So the answer is that the EU is going to bring in a similar sort of online electronic travel authority, not just like the US, like many other countries in the world, but finally the EU have got round to it and moved into the 21st century. So there's big moves afoot. So it's an entry and exit scheme. So even if you've got visa-free travel to the EU, you still need to have this travel authority in place to get in and out of the EU. And at the same time avoid having your passport stamped. Now, having your passport stamped and where you've travelled around the world could be something that you treasure, but it's a thing of the past as electronic records take over. You're already used to crossing a border with fingertip, facial recognition and retina scans as well, which are being done. And the biometric visa travel arrangements, whether it's an EU ID card or whether it's a travel visa, will allow you to be able to do that and cross the border electronically without necessarily having a person check you, or without having the visa free, without having your passport stamped. So even visa free travel now will need the Electronic Travel Authority to get you into the EU for that 90-day travel. It will still apply on the 90-day rule. It will still apply the Schengen visa 90 and 180 days unless you've got a residency permit. But it will or should start to speed up the visa crossing into the EU and stop those long queues when you leave the plane to queue up to have somebody to check your passport and stamp it if you're a UK expat nowadays. If you want to know more about the residency permit requirements, because if you've got a residency permit, then you avoid the need for Electronic Travel Authority. So if you've got an overseas property, or you've got a business, or you want to be resident abroad in an EU country and avoid the need for the travel authorities, you need to get a residency. Residency doesn't mean tax residency, but you can have a residency permit as long as you've got a permanent home in that country. So if you want more information and guidance on getting a residency permit for the EU, for Cyprus and the EU, you can contact us at projectpartnership.com and look at the good side of things that are happening this year. Next, I want to look at the bad, and the bad that we picked out today is HMRC and their system of fines. The EU, the HMRC in the UK require a tax return if they ask you for one, or if you've got tax to pay. Once you register for self-assessment, which can be compulsory for an expat going abroad, whether you've got property rental income or fixed capital gains requirements in the UK, just to check that you are and confirm your non-resident status, the EU can, the HMRC can require that you have a tax return submitted each year. And if the self-assessment system thinks that you're due to make a payment in July or January and you don't because you haven't got any tax to pay, or if they think your tax return is late because they've not joined up the dots and they've not made the assessment, then the system can produce an automatic fine. The system of fines is as much a reminder and an enforcement to get people to comply, to complete the returns. And actually in practice, 3/4 of fines that are issued are actually withdrawn in practice because there isn't a good reason for them, and there's either a reasonable excuse or a bureaucratic delay for that penalty to be issued. So it's quite a worry when you do get a fine from HMRC. It's really bad news, and it's irritating because it's an automated system. It'll keep popping up on your government gateway, will keep popping up in letters to you and to your tax agent, and despite your repeated efforts, it takes time to get them removed. That could be years, it could be months, but when it is removed, the clearance can all go away. You'll finally get confirmation that there is no fine or tax due to pay, especially if you're a non-resident expat. It is quite a common occurrence. Products have a very successful track record of solving these problems. We don't want them to occur, so we want to do your tax return early, get your tax return in on time. So if you're a UK expat or an expat in the UK with a tax return to do, let us prepare and complete and submit your UK tax return early and get the return and give them time to make the assessment. It takes them at least 90 days is their recommended time to do an assessment at the moment. In practice, it could take them 2 years, and the system can, the gremlins in the system can trigger these fines, and it's more work and it's more worry and more effort. So if you've got a tax return or if you've got a fine and you need to deal with it and you want help, you can contact us at projectpartnership.com and we will help you deal with that fine and deal with the HMRC to make sure that you're assessed fairly and you not have inappropriate penalties applied to you. For more information and guidance, contact us at projectpartnership.com. We've got a great online annual tax service which covers everything. Not only do we prepare and submit your tax return, but we also deal with the assessments and we deal with the correspondence from the HMRC. We'll chase them up for you. We'll deal with these bogus penalty fines and clear those up for you as well. It's all part of the service. So contact us at projectpartnership.com for help and guidance on that. You can also use our annual tax service if you want to catch up on national insurance pensions as an expat for overseas, for UK state pension. So when you're living and working abroad, if you've been topping up your national insurance and you've got your full 35 years, by the time you get to retirement age, you still, as a British citizen, can qualify for that UK state pension. So for more help and guidance on that, you can contact us at projectpartnership.com to get your contributions in. Before April 25, you can actually make up to 16 years worth of back contributions. That's half a UK state pension. So it's worth about £100 a week if you get brought up to date before April next year. But you do have to catch up before you reach your state retirement age, otherwise it can be too late. So contact us at projectpartnership.com. Let's get everything set up online and operating, so in the years ahead, while you're living and working abroad, you can be sure that you're securing your UK state pension in the future. So that's not bad, that could be quite good. It's good if we fix it for you. It's bad if you leave it and don't do anything. So contact us at projectpartnership.com. We've looked at the good and we looked at the bad this week. Now we want to look at the ugly. And the ugly is what's transpiring in the UK for taxpayers, both in the UK and abroad. Whether you voted or not in the UK general election, effectively we've got an autocratic democracy. There's just such an absolute majority in the ruling party that they can effectively make the decisions that they choose that fit their beliefs and their wishes and their plan for the future. If they believe in their plan and they believe that will make a better world, they need to make those changes now to give the better world time to evolve over the next 5 years. We're in 2024. In 1948, George Orwell started writing a book called 1984, which was his future, vision of the future, where facial recognition, cameras would be watching where you go and what you're doing, pretty much like the electronic travel authorities and the border crossings that we're doing now. But look at the street cameras, look at the smart motorways, and the CCT circuits around the world. They're all doing the same thing. It's quite interesting. In the EU and the Schengen zone, they're very, very open about the fact that when you cross a border, that's known. So it's known, and it might be protected information, the freedom of information. But when they're assessing residency, tax residency, and tax liabilities, they're all potentially criminal, covered under criminal law. Therefore, it gives them access to that information. They're freely using that information to see how long you're spending in country. The Schengen zone does that. It can measure, so when you're leaving a country, if you've overstayed your 90 days, that you're potentially going to be getting a fine in the EU for leaving a country because you've overstayed 90 days, because you've not got your residency permit, because you've not got a Schengen visa to stay more than 90 days in 180. The UK have introduced electronic travel authorities as well. That's already in place. They've introduced them alongside the EU to give more security, more protection because of terrorism and tracking people. That's as may be, but Big Brother is watching, and you know, as another one of George Orwell books said, is that when you get a situation in a democracy where everybody is equal, it always evolves that some people are more equal than others, and those people then make the decisions that are right for everybody, whether you agree or wanted them or voted for them in the first place. So we've got an autocratic democracy evolving in the EU about what you are, where you are, for the Schengen zone, that is to protect against terrorism and conspiracies from abroad, but also manage where you are, when you are, to pay your tax at the right place at the right time. And the ugly side of all this in the UK is that tax may go higher. So if you're one of the 523,000 UK citizens who went expat in 2023, you know, ProAct may well be helping you, and there may be a lot more in 2024, 2025. Consider relocating overseas, investing offshore in their business or property or their home. For more information and guidance, you can contact us at proactpartnership.com, and we can help you with those capital investments, protecting your family's capital and investments and property in a trust, a family trust, where you get control but can protect it from tax in all its different forms as it's going to come in. The current government are committed to not taxing working people, i.e. income taxes, so what they're going to be doing is taxing capital, investments, property, pensions, and those are the ways, and maybe the money that you spend as well, but those are the ways that you can do that. So you can, post-COVID, with the technology age, you can work remotely, and if you can work remotely, you can work in another country, pay your income and your capital taxes in that country, then we can help you when you're living and working abroad. For more information, contact us at proactpartnership.com. We've not got long to go. If you want to compare tax locations where you want to go to, there are a number of different options to consider, and ProAct can offer that guidance. We're not expats in detail in every country, but give you a broad overview in terms of EU locations such as Cyprus, Portugal, Spain, and Middle East locations such as UAE, Saudi and Dubai, or Far East locations like Hong Kong or Singapore. So different countries have got different options to work. Don't forget Bermuda, the Bahamas, they've got social insurance as well as tax agreements with the UK. So it can be very, very tax efficient. So if you want to consider which is a cost-effective country for you, which is a place that would suit your family, you can contact us at proactpartnership.com. The country with the highest salaries isn't necessarily the cheapest to live in, but the country with the highest salaries, because there's no taxes, might be more cost effective for you to do. So you've got to think about your cost of living and your lifestyle and what you want for your family and how you want to live. Contact us at proactpartnership.com for more information and guidance on different countries where you can relocate, living and working abroad. So let's consider what type of taxes the government could change in their October budget not just for UK citizens, but for non-dom expats and expats in general. We've already seen over the last few years, effectively, the Conservatives preempted Labour in implementing everything that Labour planned to do already, except they highlighted that they're going to make the non-domicile changes, but the non-domicile changes are still going to come in. So the personal allowances for dividends have been dramatically reduced from 2,000 down to 500 a year. The personal allowance for capital gains tax has been reduced from 12,000 down to 3,000 a year. The income tax allowances have been frozen and will remain frozen for the lifetime of the current parliament. There's no reason to change them, and therefore more and more people will be sucked into basic rate and higher rate taxes. The 45% additional rate at the moment is down to 125,000 before you start paying that. So those bands don't move, and if salaries increase, more and more people get towards those high rate taxes. At the moment, you're paying high rate tax on £50,000 a year. That's below the average wage for somebody that's living and working in Dubai, but the average wage in the UK, 35,000, is not that far short of becoming a high rate taxpayer in the UK. It could easily become so, doubling their tax rate in the current parliament. The one tax that's not changed over the last few years is inheritance tax. So there's a big opportunity as the fastest growing tax for the government to attack capital plans there. So, for example, you've got this fixed £325,000 allowance in the UK. Now, expats can't necessarily use the private residential allowance of the extra 175 because they're not living in the UK. But these things could easily change. For example, inheritance tax is treated as a capital gains tax. Therefore, capital gains taxes aren't applied on assets that are disposed of on death. It's just inheritance tax. So suddenly, from a very small 3,000 a year capital gains tax on death, you've got 325,000 of capital gains. So that could easily change. Why not make all property potentially capital gains tax or inheritance tax chargeable on death? Another big allowance on inheritance tax is to apply it on second death, not on first death. But easily you could say, well, no, we're all individuals, we don't believe in couples and marriage and second death, so let's apply the inheritance tax on first death. So that would be another way to increase the taxes. If you've got an investment portfolio, for example, and you had to sell those shares to distribute the benefits to the family, you could charge the capital gains on that at 10 or 20%, and then charge inheritance tax on top of that. So potentially it would add, on average, more or less into the tax bill. So there's lots of ways that could potentially change. So you can plan ahead and try and avoid some of those tax liabilities. And for that, just consider what happens with pensions. If you've got a pension fund at the moment and you've got a company pension, a defined pension, you can leave the benefits to your spouse or your children, your young children anyway. But beyond that, there's potentially a 55% tax on that pension as it handed over. If you moved your money into a private self-invested pension, then there's no income tax potentially, and no pension death tax of 55% on death when that occurs. So that's a big opportunity for you there to use a pension fund to avoid inheritance tax. It's also a big opportunity for the Labour government to say, well, let's tax pensions. So on death, you don't need all that pension. So with the defined pension, usually the widow will only get half the pension that was being paid before. So why not enforce that throughout? Why not tax a pension fund at the inheritance tax rate or the higher rate tax rate? Why not add it to income for the year and tax any pension paid out to any beneficiaries as income tax. So at the moment, somebody who dies with a private pension of £1 million could leave that to their beneficiaries without inheritance tax and without income tax. It's too easy a prize for the Labour government to get. The tax relief going in, so it's their ability to tax it coming out. So they tax all the income that's paid as pension during your lifetime as income tax. So why not tax any money that's paid out as income tax, whether it's paid out on death or to a widow or to other beneficiaries. So there's a big opportunity there to attack those. There are different ways. They could even tax them. Trusts in the UK are taxed, but if you're an expat living and working abroad, Proact operate family trusts for their clients, which can hold property, business, investment, assets, and valuable assets, and they can hold them anywhere around the world. And the family trust that Proact are creating, the family trusts, are free of any inheritance tax and any capital gains tax. They have no Cyprus taxes on them at all. So it's not going to protect your UK property from the UK property taxes you're exposed to already. But if you've got shares and investments elsewhere, or rental income being received, then potentially there is tax mitigation and tax savings to secure that family trust to be inherited down the generations without probate, without inheritance tax, without capital gains tax. So for more information and guidance on a family trust to protect your family living and working abroad down the generations, contact us at expats.com and avoid the ugly side of the tax regime that's going to become enforced in the new world that's been created in the UK over the next 5 years. Thanks a lot for listening. Just to summarise today, we said that there's a good, the bad and the ugly. The UK Passport Office is really good. The UK fine system by HMRC, when blips arrive in returns or payments, is bad, but it's good when it is resolved, and 3 out of 4 cases are normally resolved satisfactorily, but help us get your returns in early to avoid penalties and too much tax. We said that the ugly side of the world is the tax rises are coming up for the UK. We've seen dramatic reduction in allowances and tax rises for dividends, capital gains and income over the last few years. Nothing might change there, but inheritance tax and capital gains tax is rife to potentially tax pension funds, investment funds, businesses and shares going forward. To protect your family and your business from the ugly side of tax rises in the UK, contact us at proactpartnership.com. Thanks a lot for listening, and we'll see you again next time.